Greetings animal lovers, and welcome to the channel. Before starting with the video, please note that no copyright infringement is intended and I do not own nor claim to own any right for the footage and photos that you will see. This video's goal is to analyze the interaction between two powerful, intelligent animals, namely the tiger and the elephant, which share the same habitat in Asia. Have you ever wondered who is more lucky to win in a fight? Who is afraid of who? The elephant lives in herds, meanwhile the tiger is a sigma male animal, a natural isolation master. Both animals are extremely intelligent and skilled. Surely, the tiger possesses some very useful skills in a fight against the elephant. Indeed, the tiger has exceptional reflexes and dodging skills, combined with great climbing and jumping skills that can let the tiger on top of the back of the elephant. Moreover, the tiger's razor-sharp claws and jaws surely would hurt the sensitive skin of the elephant. Keep in mind that the elephant's skin is so sensitive that the elephant can feel a fly landing on its back. Finally, don't forget that the tiger is a master in hunting and killing strategies. For example, the tiger could wait for the night, in order to use its great night vision as an advantage. Let's also note that the African elephant might have been an easier opponent. Surely, the African elephant is bigger in size, but also the Asian elephant is much bigger in size compared to the tiger. However, the African elephant got much bigger vulnerable ears, which also can blind some spots of the elephant's sight. Of all the land carnivores, the tiger is the only species that has been known to charge and take down a full-grown male elephant, one-on-one.
That statement was also confirmed by the Indian government in the book Indian Railways, original from Michigan University and published in 1991 by the Railway Board, which is the apex decision-making body of the Indian Railways, basically the Ministry of Railways. On volume 37 page 121, it is stated that there are instances of tiger attacking a full-grown elephant and succeeding in killing him.
Famous biologist George Scholler in his book The Tiger, Its Life in the Wild, at the beginning of chapter 3, writes that tigers do occasionally prey on elephants. The tiger spends most of its time finding a meal, usually a deer, antelope, or wild pig. But it eats whatever it can catch. Its menu ranges from such small creatures as frogs, turtles, porcupines, monkeys, and peacocks to big animals such as buffalo and camels, and occasionally even an elephant. Famous biologist Reginald Innes Pocock in his book Mammalia, Volume 1 inch, on page 207, writes about tigers that they prey upon game of all kinds, even adult elephant. Famous zoologist Arkady Alexandrovich Slutsky stated in his book, Lord of the Jungle, on page 307, about Indian tigers preying on female and baby elephants.
In India, the tiger hunts deer, zambara and spotted boars, female elephants and baby elephants, buffaloes, nilgaw, porcupines, peacocks and livestock.
The director of the Chicago Zoo, Mr. DeVry, also claims that take a tiger in its natural environment, and there is nothing in the animal kingdom that can best it in a fight. An elephant, because of its great weight, might smoother the life out of a tiger if in an advantageous position, but it is too cumbersome to be a really dangerous antagonist. Another source stating that tigers can kill adult elephants is found in the book India's Wildlife and Wildlife Reserves by Balakrishna Seshadri, who is a wildlife expert with 20 years of first-hand experience in the wild. In the book The Twilight of India's Wildlife, Seshadri explains that
the height in itself is not necessarily an indication of the strength or power of an elephant, nor is the length of the tusks. A tusker with short tusks may be more powerful than another with long tusks. A tuskless bull, or makna, is often a tremendously strong animal, thick-set in body and trunk. There are many recorded instances of maknas worsting big tuskers in fighting in the wild.
The strategy and technique used to kill an elephant are well explained in the book Tigers, A Portrait of the Animal World, written by the critically acclaimed author Lee Server, who specializes in books of popular culture and literary history. He writes that tigers have been known to bring down an adversary as big as the elephant. He explains that the precise killing method a tiger uses depends on many factors: the timing of the tiger's attack, the type of prey, and the experience and aptitude of the individual tiger. When attacking a large animal, such as a camel, buffalo, or elephant, the tiger may try to hamstring the creature first, disabling it and making it topple, before moving to attack the throat. The immense size of these animals does not put the tiger off, but given a choice it will go for a smaller, young adult elephant or buffalo. Elephants and buffalo present special problems because they are so often found in herds. The tiger has devised a form of commando attack in such cases. It sneaks around the herd, looking to pick off a calf that has strayed. Out of fear of attack from the herd, the tiger hits and runs, killing or wounding the calf, and then lies low until the herd moves on and abandons the dead or dying calf. It is a tricky business, and tigers have been killed by herds as they try to maneuver around them. When attacking an elephant, the tiger tries to rip open the animal's trunk, making it bleed to death. The hit-and-run tactic is also used on buffalo and rhinoceros calves. The tiger's hit-and-run strategy is so famous that the Vietnamese revolutionary leader Ho Chi Minh adopted it to defeat the French colonialists. Ho Chi Minh described the French colonialists as like a mighty elephant, and the people as a tiger. If the tiger stands still, the mighty elephant will defeat the tiger. However, if the tiger attacks in secret, wounding the elephant in each attack, the elephant will slowly bleed to death. Next, let's check the book by the political scientist and member of the Association of Asian Studies, Ross Marley. In his book Patriots and Tyrants, 10 Asian Leaders, he writes about the war between tiger and elephant in Indochina, and about the technique used by the tiger to defeat the elephant. It will be a war between an elephant and a tiger. If the tiger ever stands still, the elephant will crush him with his mighty tusks. But the tiger will not stand still. He will leap upon the back of the elephant, tearing huge chunks from his side, and then he will leap back into the dark jungle. And slowly the elephant will bleed to death. That will be the War of Indochina.
Especially in Indochina, where elephants used to be utilized in military as weapons, minor ethnic tribes, who were specialized in capturing and training elephants, had the traditions of testing captured male elephants by pressing one against a tiger. If an elephant survived the fight, it was considered ideal for battles. Needless to say, that it was a very tough training and some male elephants failed to pass it. However, the ones who succeeded, became of great importance on the battlefield. The exceptional training of Asian elephants is arguably the main reason why they defeated the African elephants during the Battle of Raphia in 217 BC. The Battle of Raphia was the first time that the Indian elephants fought against the African bush elephants. The battle waged near Gaza between the king Antiochus III and Ptolemy IV Philopator of Egypt. According to Greek historian Polybius, Ptolemy's African elephants could not bear the smell, sound, and sight of their Indian counterpart. The Indian elephants won that battle, and since then the Asian elephants are called Elephas maximus, which in Latin means the greatest elephants.
So, back to the topic, would the Elephas maximus fear the Bengal tiger? How do these two powerful animals interact in the wild? In this photo we see a tiger walking in front of a herd as he couldn't care less, but clearly the elephants show alarm when a tiger is nearby.
A recent study published in 2013 by Biology Letters compared the reaction of elephants to tigers and leopards growl and found them to be very different.
Let's have a look at this scientific study. The abstract reads, prey species exhibit anti-predator behaviors such as alertness, aggression and flight, among others, in response to predators. We examined the provocative effects of elephant-triggered tiger and leopard growls while elephants attempted to crop raid. Tigers opportunistically prey on elephant calves, whereas leopards pose no threat. Therefore, we predicted that the elephant response would be reflective of this difference. Let's check their result. Elephants vocalized in a reliably different manner to playbacks of tiger and leopard growls. They silently retreated in response to tiger growls and vocalized in all but one instance to the leopard growls. Indeed, a greater frequency of elephants displayed alert or investigative behaviors to leopard growl playbacks than to tiger growl playbacks. These behaviors included instances of elephants remaining stationary, searching for acoustic and olfactory cues, as well as elephants walking around and actively investigating the area.
The dominant vocalizations in response to leopard growls, compared with the absence of vocalizing to tiger growls, were trumpets and grunts. Elephants retreated stealthily from dangerous tigers, yet announced their presence by vocalizing, particularly through aggressive vocalizations, for instance trumpets, in the majority of leopard growl playback situations. The study, which is also reported in the website of the UC Davis University, could help Indian farmers protect their crops from marauding elephants and save the lives of both people and animals. The footage from which they gain their data is available on YouTube. Let's have a look. The first video is about the reaction of a group of elephants to a leopard's growl. Now, let's have a look at the case of a group of elephants when they hear tigers growl. And now, let's see one single tusker reaction to tiger's growl. As you could see, Asian elephants are scared of tigers and retreat when they hear the sound of the feline's growl. This finding could mean another strategy for keeping crop-raiding elephants away from farmers' fields in India. However, there is another option, and that is using tiger's urine. According to an article published in 2007 by BBC News titled "Tiger Urine to Scare Killer Elephant," Asian elephant are even scared of tiger's urine. Let's read what BBC discovered. Forest officials in eastern India have advised villagers to stock tiger urine and excrement to scare away a killer elephant and his marauding herd. The elephant, named after Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden, and his herd have trampled 7 people to death in the past 3 months in Jharkhand. Forest officials say elephants stay away from areas frequented by tigers. Elephants usually don't venture into the areas where tigers live. And the elephants can smell from faraway places, District Forest Officer Paritosh Upthaya told the BBC. Tribal villagers in areas where the rogue elephants are active have already begun going into the jungle to collect tiger excreta. These instructions have worked a bit as the numbers of deaths have been reduced, said Mr. Upthaya. So, I think we can safely conclude that Asian elephant are very scared of tiger, especially at night. Nevertheless, what would be the reaction of an elephant if it faces a tiger during daylight? Let's see some footage.
To make matters worse, the kill is on the way to a waterhole and prone to disturbance. The bull elephant is short-sighted and can't see too well, but his acute sense of smell warns him of the tiger's presence. The tiger will not return to his kill now. He's eaten enough for the day and wants nothing more than a cool, shady spot to lie up until nightfall.
This elephant cannot cross the jungle for fear of the tiger. Now let's look at their interaction near waterholes. You should bear in mind that elephants do not like to share their water resources and are therefore particularly aggressive near waterholes. In this shot, we see a tiger blocking the path of an elephant. This brave elephant is unwilling to change paths and approaches the tiger slowly, cautiously and visibly nervous. The tiger waits until the elephant comes close and then decides to give way. Overall, both animals seem to respect each other. There are occasions when the tiger attacks the elephant, even in daylight. For example, when the tiger is in a hunting mood or when there are dangerous people on the elephant.
लवली यार चुप रहे सिर्फ वीडियो ले वाह माय गुडनेस
Kaziranga itself, so they were also with us. So the entire contingent went there to tranquilize the tigress, but unfortunately she leaped at us and launched a fierce attack on us. So one of our Mahout, namely Mr. Setiban Pek, was injured, and finally he was admitted to hospital. Now he is recovered and he is okay now. He is absorbed in a permanent post. Just after the attack, we fired 9 number of shots into the air, and she.
他们朝有猎物发出警报的方向搜寻，这种警报能暴露老虎的位置。幼虎的父亲查吉尔正在这里。他在2周前的一场战斗中腹部受伤，那时他显得格外安静，但现在不可同日而语了。查吉尔又重获雄风。
Two tigers are fighting. One of them must be the female we've been following. Another tiger has strayed into her territory. If her cubs are nearby, that would explain her fury. The power of this animal is quite awesome, and here she is just a few feet away. I'm glad I'm here with Chen Chung Kali. my first tiger. Oh, I must admit, the bottle did go. They are a bit fierce. Oh, our first tiger. Oh, well done, Sam. Well done, sweetheart. We saw a tiger. Yeah, we'll celebrate. We'll have a few of them, as it happens. Oh, my first tiger. The magnificence of the tiger is beyond doubt. I know now never to underestimate the tiger's power. And a little later I felt it, closer than I ever really wanted to. We stumbled into the same tigress again. She was completely hidden and charged us.
Oh, go.
We were going through the thing, and suddenly there it was, and it was going for us. It was literally going for us. It had a head. Well, it must have been as wide as this. I don't know if you saw it on the camera, but I've never been so scared in all my life, and that's it. I've had enough. I'm going home now.
It's really scary.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Thank you very much. And there should be a government health warning. A government health warning about tigers. Tigers can seriously damage your sanity. I tell you that. I'm going bananas. Come on, sunshine. Let's go home. Whoa.
In Jim Corbett National Park, a family of elephants is enjoying a meal in the sun. But nearby, a tiger is searching for his dinner. The elephants are busy eating. The tiger gets aware of the presence of these elephants in the grassland. The tiger gets closer to the elephants. He's ready to catch his dinner in the form of a small elephant baby. The leader of the herd got his smell and started running away from him. The elephants run away, leaving the tiger hungry and sad.
अभी सामने जाओ अभी सामने अरे टाइगर याने अடிக்கிறது பாக்க வீடியோ பண்ணா கொஞ்சம் கடிச்சிச்சு
ये गया इसके पीछे
किसी में नहीं आ पाएगा।
देखो देखो
हाँ हाँ मैं कर रहा हूँ ना, रिकॉर्डिंग में है। अभी टक्कर घूमेगा भी
This image was taken by renowned wildlife photographer Rajoshi Banerjee, who added the accompanying description. Elephant herds with babies are very careful about tiger attacks. And tigers know too well that elephants are not an easy prey, especially during daytime. To my great surprise, a desperate Corbett tigress with 4 cubs to feed started stalking a big herd of elephants in broad daylight, causing utter panic and shrill trumpeting in the herd, and eventually causing the herd to bolt away. It was amazing to see how a single tigress could scare away a big herd of elephants. I was fortunate to witness this extraordinary predator behavior in the Bijrani zone of Corbett in 2015. This other photo was taken by wildlife photographer Abdul Shez, who captured it as follows. My dad always used to tell stories Tat he had experienced in Kabini, and Tat used to thrill me from my childhood. I had picturized Kabini in my own way, and when I had the chance to go to the place mesmerized me completely. On my first safari I was able to spot a tiger, backwater male. Until now I've been to Kabini for 30 times, and each time I was successful in spotting the tigers. It became the luckiest place for me to study about tigers. On one occasion I was watching for elephants which stood a couple of meters away. Then I spotted something crawling in the bush nearby, and was shocked to see a tiger there. It had laid and had one eye on the elephant calf. The time was 8 a.m. in the morning, and stood with its focus on the calf where spotted deers just behind the tiger, but it showed no interest in catching them. The tiger in order to catch the calf crossed the main road for almost 3 times, and I was witnessing a disciplined hunting skill of that tiger. It's rare for a tiger to chase elephants, but it was very bold and fearlessly, and it chased them for some time and even injured the calf ND back. And when the elephants no longer had the energy to run more, the tiger made its move and killed the calf, while the other elephants, including the mother, stood helplessly. Let's take a look at some other beautiful photos of encounters between wild tigers and elephants.
When the most powerful collide in the jungle, the immense power of the Bengal tiger and the Indian elephant is indescribable. The tiger decides to attack the elephant, not humans. He has the capabilities to fight any animal on this planet. His brute strength is indescribable. Elephant escaping is not unusual. He is in front of the wrong opponent who is ruthless, and if you are a giant, he will not hesitate to make a strong offer for you and also to overthrow you if he decides to sympathize. The hunters shoot the standing tiger 3 shots. The elephant comes and runs over the dead tiger,
I hope you have now learned some interesting facts, and please bear with my editing skills. In the last part of this video, we will go in search of accounts of tigers and elephants attacking or killing each other. We will look at old hunting literature as well as more recent news articles.
A number of reports of tigers attacking or killing adult elephants have been published in the Journal of the Bombay Natural History Society, a reputable scientific publication. Inside Volume 7 of the Journal of the Bombay Natural History Society, Mr. Corbett, conservator of forests in Burma, writes that I have seen it stated more than once that a tiger will not attack an elephant, or that on the rare occasions when it does venture to attack one of these huge brutes, it always gets the worst of it. The following facts will, however, I think, help to disprove these statements. In September last, a timber contractor reported to me that a female elephant and calf had been attacked by a tiger when they had been turned loose to graze at the headwaters of one of the streams which rise in the Pagu Yomas, and that the calf had been killed. I hardly credited the report at first, but, on inquiry, I found that it was perfectly true. From the footprints it was evident that the tiger had tackled the calf, a 2-year-old male, when it had strayed from its mother. The mother had come to the rescue, but was unable to do anything and only got badly mauled by the hind quarters, and was apparently driven off. The calf was killed, and found partly eaten the next day. Shortly after, another attack on a contractor's elephant was reported. It was evident, from the marks on the ground, that the elephant, which was a full-grown female, had been caught when asleep, and when I saw it a week afterwards it still had dreadful marks on the top of its shoulders and in the center of the back, which could be the work of nothing else but a tiger. It is more than probable that it was the same tiger which had killed the calf 3 months ago, for he was evidently very lame, if not maimed, the marks of 3 feet being distinct, whilst only the claws of the 4th just touched the ground. The spear had evidently nearly given him his quietus. For days afterwards a tiger tackled another elephant, this time a big tusker worth over 2,000 rupee, which died 5 days after. In this case it would appear that the elephant was in a narrow and shallow nullah with steep banks. The tiger jumped from the bank, and was shaken off more than once, but returned to the charge again and again. The elephant, however, got off with its life for the time being, and was taken into the nearest village with dreadful wounds along nearly the whole length of its back, the points where the tiger had apparently concentrated his attack being the backbone about a foot in front of the tail. The tiger, I'm sorry to say, is still at large. The European in the district are all officials, and are too hard work to spare time for a tiger hunt, whilst a party of Burman shikaris who have gone out, urged on by the offer of a reward, have as yet had no luck. In Volume 32 of the Journal of the Bombay Natural History Society, Arthur John Wallace Milroy, the conservator of forests from 1933 to 1936, reports of a tiger that attacked and severely mauled a full-grown female elephant defending her calf. I have known of a female that was captured, lacerated and weak from loss of blood and exhaustion, standing beside her small calf, which had been killed by a tiger, and there was no doubt that the tiger subsequently attacked the mother when she tried to drive it away. In Volume 36 of the Journal of the Bombay Natural History Society, Mr. J. E. K. Swain, a British Army lieutenant, reported the case of a tiger attacking a mature cow elephant in Malaysia. As promised, I am sending you particulars of an attack on a mature cow elephant by a tiger. The incident came to my notice the 15th of May of this year, when Mr. Davy, who is an elephant hunter and control officer in the Plas Valley, Perak, invited me to accompany him on his inspection of the patrolled rent ice or track beyond which it is the duty of the patroller to drive all wild elephants. This track, which is 13.5 miles long, lies on an average 5 miles from the cultivated land which it protects. This is by the way and merely explains the object of my trip. On arrival at Jalong, we found an elephant waiting to take our bedding and kit. Mr. Davy drew my attention to a scar about 2 feet long stretching from behind the elephant's right foreleg and finishing up under her belly. He told me this happened about 6 months previously. Savage, the government geologist, had hired the elephant and stopped the night in the jungle. The elephant was let loose as usual to feed at night with a sinker, rattan shackle, on to prevent her straying too far. In the morning she appeared at the camp with a huge wound and a piece of flesh and skin hanging almost to the ground. Investigation showed tiger tracks where she had been lying, and it was evident from an inspection of these tracks that the tiger had attacked her as she lay, probably clinging on with teeth and claws and tearing the flesh by its weight as the elephant got up. The victim would not allow anyone to touch the wound, and a suggestion by the health officer to cut away the hanging flesh could not be carried out. She could not of course be worked after this and was left to her own devices, her recovery being due entirely to her own efforts. On every possible occasion she bathed the wound with mud from certain wallows which she selected, possibly for their healing qualities, and when not doing this she continuously fanned the wound with a light switch of lalang grass held in her trunk. In this way she kept flies and other insects from the wound. The torn flesh gradually shriveled up and fell away, and at the end of 3 months she was fit for work again. A slight scar being the only evidence of what was no doubt intended for a murderous attack on her vital organs. The last report from the Journal of the Bombay Natural History Society is by Arthur Smithies, who was chief conservator of the Forest of Nepal from 1940 to 1947. Before we read his remarkable account, let us first take a look at his book Big Game Shooting in Nepal with leaves from the Maharaja's diary. In this book, there are several accounts of tiger attacks on large elephants, which are summarized in these tables. Finally, in Volume 42 of the Journal of the Bombay Natural History Society, forest scientist Evelyn Arthur Smithies documented the account of a male tiger and a tigress destroying a very large bull tusker elephant in a fight that lasted 3 hours and was witnessed by several people. The fishermen, and the few dozen of inhabitants of the bazaar, heard the nerve-shattering roar of a charging tiger, and the fishermen saw a big male tusker elephant come out into the open river bed, being attacked by the 2 tigers. For 3 hours, the battle between the elephant and the 2 tigers raged up and down the river bed, in full view, in the moonlight, of the bungalows on the cliff. The bazaar inhabitants were so terrified at the appalling noise and infuriated roars of the tigers so close at hand, that they barricaded themselves in their houses and no one, except the petrified fishermen who were cut off, saw this awe-inspiring and unique spectacle. About 11 p.m. the noise died down, and the next morning the tigers had departed, but the dead elephant was lying at the foot of the bluff, within a stone's throw of a bungalow. The marks on the unfortunate elephant were very instructive. The trunk was quite untouched and so was the face except deep scratches around the eyes, and both eyes had been clawed out. There were terrible bites and scratches on the top of the head and neck, back and rump, and finally the throat had been bitten and torn open, evidently the coup de grace. These are the facts as told to me by the eyewitnesses and by the Tahsil officer who heard the battle and who had the job of getting rid of the body of the elephant. It is probable that the tiger cub was the cause of the trouble. He may have blundered into the elephant or gone sniffing around in curiosity and received a kick or a blow for his trouble, causing him to yelp. This would at once raise the maternal fury of the tigress, and the tiger would come to the help of his mate. The wound on the elephant give an indication of the tactics of the tigers. It is clear that no frontal attack was attempted, or the trunk and face of the elephant must have been mauled. Probably one tiger threatened or demonstrated in front, enabling the other tiger to leap on the back, an easy leap for a tiger, and start biting and scratching. It was probably shaken off several times, but again returned to the attack. At some stage of the fight, one of the tigers must have managed to jump or crawl onto the top of the head and from that position to have clawed out the eyes. Perhaps deliberately, for it seems a natural instinct of the cat tribe to go for the eyes. One can image the poor blind elephant, tortured with the fiendish laceration of its back, stumbling along in agony over the boulders and rough ground, falling ultimately over some low bank and exposing its throat to a hellish mauling from the other tiger, and dying from loss of blood or severance of its windpipe. Truly the tigers took a terrible revenge for any possible injury to their cub. To this report, the editors of the Bombay Natural History Society Journal added a note saying that encounters between tigers and elephants occasionally occur. Mr. Corbett, writing in our journal, Volume 7, page 119, gives 3 instances. 2 deal with attacks on female elephants. The third records an attack on a big tusker, which was so dreadfully mauled along the whole length of its back, that it died a few days after. As is usual with big animals that cannot be easily mastered, the tiger's attack in the 3 instances reported by Corbett was not frontal, but but directed from the rear, the tiger biting into the hindquarters, back and shoulders. In the instance reported in our journal by Mr. Swain, volume 36, page 983, the tiger's attack on a cow elephant was directed to the belly and underparts. This change from the usual method was probably an adaptation to the circumstances. The tiger is a versatile killer and follows no stereotyped method in his killing. The same incident reported by Smithies can be found also in the book Jungle Law by Jim Corbett. Please note that these reports from the Journal of the Bombay Natural History Society can also be found in the book The Asian Elephant by J. C. Daniel, who was director of the prestigious Bombay Natural History Society for over 30 years. He also quotes the following on page 71 when talking about the elephant's sense of smell. The power of an elephant trunk is enormous, and with it the animal can lift a ton with ease. Though immensely strong, such a trunk has its own peculiar dangers, and its care is a matter of constant vigilance and anxiety to its owner. If threatened by a tiger, it is curled up over the forehead. Next, let's check the book written by the Secretary of the Government of India, Vivek Sinha, titled The Vanishing Tiger. On page 180 he writes that, though other jungle inhabitants seldom interfere with an elephant, a hungry tiger will not hesitate to attack a solitary animal. The tiger will never let go an opportunity to prey upon calves and juveniles. J. C. Daniel in his book, The Asian Elephant, gives a number of recorded instances of tiger predating even upon full-grown elephants. Colonel Kesri Singh in his book, The Tiger of Rajasthan, has given an instance of a fight between a tiger and a big tusker in Assam. The Tiger of Rajasthan is the autobiographic book of Colonel Kesri Singh, who was a naturalist, game warden, hunter, tracker and Bengal tiger expert. He and his party witnessed the episode of a tiger killing an enraged bull tusker elephant in a head-on battle in Assam. He called that episode Death by 1,000 Cuts. Here is a photo of Colonel Kesri and a description of his party. In addition to the Maharaja and myself, the party consisted of a lad called Surji Io Shatol and 2 military officers, Colonel Bo Sahib and Captain Sultan Hussain, he who shot the bold tiger who seized his elephant's tail. In chapter 15 he writes, the same trait in tigers is more forcibly illustrated by a story from Assam, for which I have excellent authority. Some 3 or 4 years ago a tiger, having killed a baby elephant, was attacked by a tusker. Instead of trying to get clean away, the tiger came at the elephant from the flank or rear, and having got onto his back raked and tore at him with his claws. The fight went on for a long time, the tusker apparently trying to dislodge the tiger by running under and against trees. He seems to have succeeded in this at least once, but only for the tiger to recover and return to the attack. In the morning the area was examined and the story reconstructed from the copious signs left about the area. The aggressor had the best of it, for the party found the remains of the elephant calf and the dead tusker's huge bulk, atrociously torn, but the tiger had disappeared.
Next, the book, The Biology and Conservation of Wild Felids, written by
biologist David MacDonald, Director of the Wildlife Conservation Unit at Oxford University, and Professor Andrew Loveridge. On page 23 they write that, tigers depend on a large ungulate prey base and are capable of killing prey as large as adult Asian rhinos and elephants. They back up this claim with a reference to Mel Sundquist, Professor Emeritus at the University of Florida. He and his wife, biologist Fiona, spent 2 years tracking tigers on the backs of elephants. In the book, Tiger Moon, Fiona writes that,
I personally never witnessed an attack by a tiger, but shortly after fieldwork began, Mel and Kitty had an encounter with Tigress number 1 that neither will ever forget. Both Mel and Kitty wore headphones and were trying to monitor the tigress's radio signal above the elephant's noise. They stopped to pinpoint number 1's position more exactly and found she was only a short distance away. Kitty climbed into a tree to get a better look into the grass. All 3 elephants were nervous, bunched close together, almost touching. Their stomachs rumbled and growled, and they slapped their trunks against the ground with loud, popping noises. Kitty was moving around in the tree, pointing with the long aluminum antenna. He began to speak, then everyone heard the meow of a young cub. Number 1 exploded out of the grass with a shattering roar. She made one leap up the tree and in a split second was on top of Kitty. He saw her coming and tried to ward her off with the antenna, but she flung it aside without noticing. She sank her claws into his thigh and buttocks and bit deeply into his leg. The force of her acceleration ripped Kitty off the branch and they both tumbled to the ground 15 feet below. No one could believe what was happening. Kitty's wife Pat repeated "Oh, my God," over and over again, her voice rising in hysteria, but everyone else was dumb with shock. Before anyone could move, the tigress charged again, her roars blasting through the silence. The elephants spun on their heels and bolted in blind panic ahead of the enraged tigress. Nothing could stop them. Equipment flew everywhere in a wild confusion of screaming and trumpeting. People clung to ropes or whatever they could find, trying not to be swept off the elephants in the headlong dash through the bushes. The 2 project elephants refused to go back in. Badai and Diplal, the drivers, whacked them fiercely with sticks, but the elephants only screamed and swung their heads from side to side, refusing to budge. Himal Kali, the government elephant, had taken part in many royal hunts and was not so easily frightened. Her driver eventually managed to coax her back toward the place where Kitty had fallen.
So Professor Mel Sundquist saw with his own eyes the attack of a tiger on a full-grown elephant. The old hunting literature is full of such episodes. On page 20, the Sundquists explain in detail how tigers were hunted in the past. Let us read. For over 150 years, tigers have been driven toward hunters waiting in trees. Tiger hunting in the Indian subcontinent used to be a common pastime of the wealthy and privileged, who relied heavily on the expertise of shikaris like Prem. Prem learned the art of tiger hunting from his father, who had worked as a royal shikari on the lavish hunts that took place in the Terai during the 1930s and 1940s. The technique we used to capture tigers was a modified version of the ring hunt, invented in Nepal in the 1800s. The old method employed as many as 300 elephants and even more men. Early in the morning, shikaris would go into the jungle to examine the baits that had been tied out the previous afternoon. If one had been killed, they would quietly walk a huge circle, up to a half-mile in diameter, around the site of the kill, bending the grass at intervals to mark a path that would form a ring. The elephants were then summoned and divided into 2 groups that proceeded to left and right around the circle like a pair of pincers, the rear elephants dropping out at intervals to station themselves along the boundary of the ring. When the 2 lead animals met, the order "heads inward" was given. All the elephants then turned toward the center of the circle and moved inward, crushing the tall grass and tangled vegetation. The Fanits whistled and shouted to drive the tiger into the middle of the circle. Finally the elephants stood shoulder to shoulder, the ring was complete, and the tiger was surrounded by a solid wall of elephants. The stancher elephants, carrying the guests of honor with rifles at the ready, would then enter the ring and move backward and forward, trying to catch a glimpse of the tiger in the dense cover. As many as 4 tigers were sometimes surrounded in the same ring, and the rumbling and trumpeting of the elephants, the excited shouts of the mahouts, and the roar of the cornered tiger charged the air with excitement. In his book Big Game Shooting in Nepal, E. A. Smithies cautions would-be participants that this is not a sport for bad shots or hasty excitable people, and so it wasn't. In an effort to escape, tigers frequently charged the surrounding elephants, leaping onto their heads only to be shaken off again. Elephants often bolted in the face of such an onslaught, and people were thrown everywhere as terrified animals dashed through the vegetation. Many of the king's elite hunting elephants were trained to withstand a tiger attack and would flick the tiger off with a shake of their head and deliver a fatal kick with one powerful forefoot. Over the years, it became more and more difficult to obtain the required number of elephants, and the ring drive was modified to include strips of white cloth known as bit. The circle was delineated by this white cloth, and elephants were stationed at intervals behind it. Tigers tended to avoid the bit cloth and thus could be kept in one place by only a few elephants until the guest of honor arrived. In his book Tiger, The Ultimate Guide, Indian naturalist Valmik Thapa provides additional information on the techniques used to hunt tigers with elephants. Let us first read at the start of chapter 2 what he says regarding the tiger's anatomy.
The tiger, whose proper nutrition depends upon consuming 1 deer-sized animal a week, has evolved into a supreme hunter. Its sensory organs help it to locate elusive animals in the densest of undergrowth or on the blackest of nights, and its striped fur allows it to blend in with the surroundings. The tiger's padded paws permit a stealthy and silent approach when stalking a potential kill, and its skeleton and muscles provide the strength and speed necessary to catch prey as big as an elephant or as small as a grasshopper. A strong jaw and razor-sharp teeth can deliver a quick death, tearing tough hide and slicing through raw meat. The flexibility of the tiger's skeleton allows it to jump to heights of up to 10 to 12 feet.
Elephants were trained to encircle tigers so that hunters would have a chance to shoot them, as this Samuel Howitt illustration shows. The cornered tiger would frequently leap upon the elephant's head to attack the humans before being shot at close range. The Italian anthropologist Paolo Manfredi, who works to conserve endangered ecosystems, wrote a fascinating chapter about tigers in antiquity on page 170 of the book. She relates how the Indians informed one of Alexander the Great's generals, Nearchus, during his campaign in India that
the tiger is an animal much stronger than the elephant, bigger than the biggest of horses, and no other creature can match it in speed and strength, not even the elephant. In the event of an encounter between a tiger and an elephant, the tiger could jump on the elephant's head and easily strangle it.
Next, let's check the work by Roland Ward, which reconstructs the incident in which Prince Philippe, Duc d'Orléans, was attacked by a wounded tigress that very nearly ended his life. Let us now turn to the book Big Game Shooting in Upper Burma. This book is in the library of Cornell University and was written by Major George Patrick Evans of the Indian Army. Here we find an account of a tigress attacking a full-grown elephant, which subsequently dies of the injuries sustained due to blood loss. I do know of an authenticated case in which a tiger in Burma attacked a full-grown tamed elephant. The unfortunate beast, a female belonging to the forest department, was hobbled and turned into the jungle at night to feed, as is the custom in Burma with tame elephants. The tiger sprang onto her quarters, and literally feasted on the poor thing while alive, tearing huge chunks of meat from her flanks and quarters, probably springing onto her again and again, after being shaken off, and biting out a huge mouthful of flesh each time. Whether the elephant at last succeeded in getting rid of her terrible assailant, or whether the tiger, having satisfied its hunger, slunk away to digest its meal, is not known. The elephant was found still on her legs next morning, but almost dead from loss of blood and pain, and succumbed to her injuries during the day. Joseph Farrer, a British physician who served as Surgeon General in India in the late 19th century, provides an account in his book The Royal Tiger of Bengal, page 15, of a tigress displaying exceptional strength against elephants. He witnessed the tigress deeply lacerating the heads of 2 adult elephants and severely injuring the hindquarters of a third. In a similar vein, on page 46, Farrer describes another incident involving a tigress that single-handedly incapacitated a large elephant. On one occasion I remember to have seen a tigress pull a large elephant down till her head almost rested on the ground, simply from the intense pain caused by the implanted claws. The tigress was partly shaken, partly shot off the elephant's head and killed. Now, let's check the book Speaking Widely by Jack Denton Scott. It reports the account of a tigress badly mauling an elephant 10 times her size, before getting shot dead by a man. English sportsman F. C. Hicks had a tigress charge out of the grass and leap on his elephant's hindquarters to get at him. He shot her, she circled and again leaped on the elephant, clawing and biting the huge beast until she died. The elephant, 10 times the size of the cat, trembled and trumpeted in terror throughout the attack. It is not only because of courage like this that I consider the tiger the true king of cats. Furthermore, the book documents astonishing accounts of tigers able to charge after being shot to vital organs. The great cat's fatality is also astounding. After Clifford Batten shot a tigress through the brain with a .450 high-velocity rifle, she traveled over a mile and was still alive and ready to fight 12 hours later. Both shot through the heart with an elephant rifle. 2 tigers ran more than 60 yards. Another charged 100 yards to kill the shooter, even though his heart was blown apart. A tigress drilled through the stomach with a .577 lived without food for 11 days to attack again in a fierce charge. Next, let's check the famous illustrated newspaper Popular Monthly by Frank Leslie, which can be found in the University of California Library. Tigers have been known to spring clear from the ground into the howdah, but such instances are rare. Generally, he does not appear to distinguish between the elephant and the persons on his back, and his attack seems to be aimed at the beast more than at his riders. Elephants are very fearful of tigers, and always show more or less alarm when in their vicinity. I have known many elephants to turn tail and run away when near the tiger's lair, and sometimes all the efforts of the mahout fail to check them. Not infrequently they run under the limbs of trees in their flight, and the howdah and its occupants are brushed off. Major R of Lucknow was killed in this way during a tiger hunt in the Purnia district. A tiger charged his elephant, and the latter ran away. As it passed under a tree, the howdah was swept off, and the major and his servant were both killed by the fall. When in the neighborhood of a tiger, the elephant generally holds his trunk high in the air, as it is his most vulnerable point, and he is anxious to protect it from injury. In a fight with a tiger, the elephant uses his trunk very little, through fear of injury, but endeavors to trample his enemy underfoot or pierce him with his tusks. Once let an elephant get his heavy foot fairly on a tiger, and the fight is soon over, it is all up with the yellow-coated thief, or, rather, it is all down with him. But in the majority of fights between them, the tiger generally gets the best of it, or would do so, if man did not come to the elephant's aid. In one of our hunts in the northeast we had one elephant killed by a tiger, or, rather, he was so badly hurt that he died the next day, and another very severely wounded. Even the elephant's thick hide cannot resist the tiger's claws, and as for his teeth, they have been known to make an impression on a plate of iron.
Let's move to the book Incidents of Foreign Sports and Travel by Colonel Pollock, who was a British military officer in India and got tons of experience hunting tigers. On page 39 he writes that shooting off elephants out of howdahs is very exciting. There is just enough danger in it to stir up one's blood. If every elephant used could be thoroughly depended upon at all times, there would be little risk, but an elephant that is perfectly staunch one day will probably turn tail the next, and a powerful tiger is capable of pulling down a large elephant. On page 41, he begins by recounting an episode in which an elephant took a wounded tiger by surprise and played football with it, killing it in the process. On one occasion, Archie C., lately Deputy Commissioner of Kamrup, then in charge of the Barpeta subdivision, and I were beating in the douars for whatever we could get. The elephants moved along briskly enough till we got to the edge of the Beal. They then began to be unsteady, to give tongue, in other words to make dismal noises, and as there was no solid ground, they flickled the tips of their trunks against their own legs, and in other ways gave us plainly to understand that they advanced under compulsion. We had not fired a shot and had entered about 15 yards into the marsh, when, as if by a preconcerted arrangement, several tigers, as far as we could judge, rushed roaring in our direction. We could see the water splash, but the tigers were themselves hidden by the vegetation. We opened fire a little ahead of the moving grass, but I don't think we touched one of them. The uproar now was more than our elephants could stand, even packed as they were, so they broke away from the mahouts, spun round on their own axis, and made a strategic movement to the rear. One tiger which followed my mount to the very edge of the cover I got a glimpse of, for I had turned round and stood in the howdah, looking back, expecting what had occurred. At it I took a snapshot and hit it somewhere, for it gave a roar. This was a bit of luck, of course, as no one could be sure of killing an object even the size of a tiger when carried along at racing speed. But Lakshmi was a very smooth goer, and so used was I to living, as it were, on an elephant's back, that I was tolerably at my ease whether it was standing still, walking, or at full gallop, which is by the way an amble, for elephants move both legs on one side at the same time. From constant practice, I could shoot snipe off their backs nearly as well as I could on foot, and this knack has stood me in good stead when being chased either by a buffalo, rhinoceros or tiger, as I think the reader will acknowledge when he has read more of this volume. If the elephants were in a funk before, they were now doubly so, literally trembling with fear, and it was only by a free use of the ankus, or driving hook, they could be induced to advance. Again, the tigers tried the same tricks, but with less success this time. One charged home. We found afterwards that it was the one I had fired at, and bit an elephant in the leg, near the foot, but who was the nearest, neatly bowled it over. The others, finding our phalanx unbreakable, wheeled off to the right and left, and took refuge in a nasty boggy part of the Beale, into which the elephants could not penetrate. Fortunately, C had some rockets and other fireworks with him, and after discharging a few infernal machines, we started the game afresh. They did not attempt to leave the marsh, as the country on our right side was open, and on the other our elephants had trodden down the grass, so that there was no cover for them to hide in if out of the quagmire. C now went to one side of the Beale and I to the other, where I was on pretty firm ground. Everywhere we beat about, but could not see a sign of a tiger, and there ought to have been one, if not two. Getting out of the swamp, I halted close to a bush, to watch C. I saw him raise his gun and fire, over the side of his howdah, and the next moment a tiger sprang clean off the ground, and seized hold of the lower bar of it with both teeth and claws. There was a crash, the elephant fell onto its side, sending C and the mahout flying, and then there was the devil's own hullabaloo where the mass of flesh was struggling. I was glad to see the bipeds pick themselves up as I started for the scene of the accident. On moving off, a sound made me turn round, and from the very bush by which I had been standing for 5 minutes or more, out rushed a tiger. I fired in such a hurry that I am ashamed to say I missed with both barrels. Before I could get to the fallen elephant, a huge mukna, a tuskless male, he, after moving his legs up and down like a pendulum, recovered his feet, and immediately commenced to play football with the tiger, kicking it forward with a hind foot, and throwing it back with a fore. If the brute had not been dead, he could not have long survived such treatment. We had to take 2 female elephants, one on either side of him, before we could pacify him and get him away. The only wounds he had on him were the claw marks of the tiger's hind legs, by which he had clung to the elephant's belly. The howdah was smashed to bits. One of C.'s guns had a broken stock. So, considering all things, the elephant and the 2 men escaped wonderfully well. On examining the tiger, we found almost every bone in his body broken, for he was literally kicked into a jelly. C's last shot had caught the foe fairly in the chest, passed through the lungs and stomach, and made its exit close to the rump. If the elephant, who was standing on a declivity which gave way, and caused him to fall, had not squashed him, the tiger must have died of his wounds. On page 395, Colonel Pollock narrates another interesting incident, this time involving a big powerful tusker. Let us read. The mahout was a Mussulman, and as such a fatalist, he had seen me kill much game. Very few of these men are cowards, and if they have confidence in the shooting powers of their master, they are almost foolhardy. I did not doubt the man, but the question was, how would the elephant behave? He was a big powerful tusker. Still, he would not go into the bush, but we were saved all further trouble by the tiger rushing out. The elephant spun round to bolt, but the feline was too quick for him and sprang onto his hindquarters and commenced to clamber up rather too close to the howdah to be pleasant. Our steed went off at full speed. How he did run, to be sure. I had no idea he possessed such a nice turn of speed. I was rather upset by this sudden onslaught, and the pace we were going at. The tiger had his head close to the back seat of the howdah and intended going for me, but I am well accustomed to riding elephants, whether at a sedate step or at a gallop. It is ambling, of course, for no elephant can gallop, but they can go at their own pace nearly as fast as an ordinary horse can go his fastest. It did not take me more than a couple of seconds to turn round over the back of the howdah. with the barrel almost touching the tiger's cranium. I fired, and he fell off all in a heap. Another incident is narrated by Lieutenant Colonel Reginald George Burton, who was a keen big game hunter specializing in tigers. In his book, Tiger Hunters, he recalls about an elephant afraid to face a wounded tigress. The elephant was sent round with a man and a supply of stones on her back, and the tigress charged out when stones were thrown. With a succession of coughing roars, she sprang onto the elephant's head, and having a broken arm, was shaken off while the elephant, trumpeting loudly, crashed off through the forest. But this gallant tigress pursued and sprang onto the retreating elephant's hindquarters, only to be kicked off, when a shot in the flank sent her back to cover. Here we soon found her in an exhausted condition, and finished her off, but by this time the terrified elephant had fled back to the tents and had not stopped on the way. The Maharaja Sir Madho Rao Scindia of Gwalior writes in his book, A Guide to Tiger Shooting, a clear warning to the young sportsman not to let the elephant get too close to the tiger, even if the tiger is wounded. When a wounded tiger is to be tracked on an elephant, it is right that the advance should be made cautiously in the direction the tiger has gone, taking care that the elephant is not taken too close to the tiger. Otherwise, the danger is that the elephant might be mauled and spoiled for good for tiger sport. It is advisable to put buffaloes or goats in front of the elephant, as by this means the wounded tiger will be located with ease and without risk.
From one Maharaja to another, we now come to the book, 37 Years of Big Game Shooting in Cooch Behar, the Dewars, and Assam. This book was written by Maharaja Nripendra Narayan of the princely state of Cooch Behar in India. Let us first take a look at the photos of the elephants that the Maharaja used for hunting tigers. Keep in mind that those are the elephants that got badly mauled by the tigers. On page 4 it says, the second largest tiger bagged during the shoot. He measured 9'10", as he lay, proved a splendid fighter. Charging among the elephants, he mauled several badly before he met his death. On page 14 the Maharaja writes that, here our party ran into a tremendous fighter, in the shape of a tiger, for which at the time we were absolutely unprepared. All were quietly looking about for peafowl, when, without the slightest warning, up jumped a tiger, Neller, who had only No. 5 shot in his barrels, let fly at him, and Thomas, who next came on him, found him savage enough. The beast lost no time in charging, and very nearly made it good. As it was, he got onto the elephant and made a big hole in his ear before he got his quietus. On pages 19-20 there is the account of a single tiger badly mauling 7 adult elephants before being shot dead. One of the tigers showed tremendous sport. The first day he got away altogether. However, we got onto him again on the second and bagged him, but not before he had badly mauled 7 of the elephants. On page 35 a tigress mauling an adult elephant. The tiger, which we found and killed some way off from the kill, fell to Moore's rifle. The tigress was put up quite casually. She got away at once, but we followed her up into the same patch of jungle, in which the fine tiger was shot on the Loth March. We got her out without much difficulty, but on being pursued by 3 howdahs, she stopped and charged C. Hills, mauling the elephant, Gulzar Piari, rather badly on the off hind and near fore. The elephant, in trying to get rid of the tigress, very nearly threw Hills out. However, she was finished soon after this. On page 49 another tigress, this time biting badly over the elephant's eye. On page 60 the story of 2 tiger brothers mauling adult elephants, including a big tusker named Kennedy. At first things did not look at all promising. The jungle was so small that I really expected nothing out of it at all. No sooner, however, did the beat begin than a shot told me we had found. Almost immediately after a second tiger got up right beneath my elephant, but I was so intent looking out for the first one, that I did not notice the second, and this one led us a rare dance, before we had done with him. Bignell hit him but too low and far back to stop him. This made him very savage. He crossed over the Nola into a very thick patch, and then the ball began. He first mauled Kate, and then Kennedy, twice, very nearly getting right onto the top of the pad. As it was he bit a piece of the gadla off. Jogan, who was on Kennedy, thought it was about all up with him, and told me he could have touched the tiger with his foot. However, all's well that ends well, and we got him all right. The curious thing about the whole affair was the 2 big tiger getting up practically together. They were evidently brothers. On page 84 a medium-sized tiger clawing an adult elephant. The second day after this at Barahamua we bagged a medium-sized tiger, remarkable for nothing but clawing an elephant. On page 144 a wounded tigress attacking an adult elephant's head.
Early next morning Ashton woke me up to tell me that Bully Shikari, who had gone out to see the kill, had come across the tigress in a small patch, about twice the size of my tent. We got on pads at once, there being no time to put on howdahs, and went out. Beating through the patch the first time we found nothing, though one of the mouts fancied he saw something moving in the grass. We then beat back and this time she broke forward all right. Several shots were fired and she was certainly hit, but she still kept going until we lost sight of her in the burnt grass. As we were looking about, suddenly Dick Cunningham came right on top of her, and before you could say, knife, she was on the elephant's head, striking at the mount. Fortunately the elephant managed to chuck her off, and McCabe finished her on the ground. She was a good-sized tigress, measuring 8'8" in total length. On page 200 there is the account of a tigress, who proved to be an exceptional fighter. We found a real good fighting tigress close to camp on the 9th. The day before, we had seen a dead cow, and we started operations by inspecting the place. I saw pug marks and fancied they belonged to a tiger, and not to a leopard as some thought. The first 2 beats were blank, and we then tried a small patch, on the other side of the Nola, out of which a tigress came out. 10 Ezra. He fired, and on receiving the shot she charged at once, Ezra's elephant swinging round and making off. The tigress then swam the Nola and Burgess and Ashton got shots at her, as she was crossing. Believing the beast was wounded and meant mischief, I only sent on 4 guns as stops, joining the line myself, with Smythe, Paree and Ashton. We hadn't gone very far when I heard a roar, and the next moment elephants were flying round in all directions. Unfortunately she had singled out a pad elephant on which to wreak her vengeance, and she got well home on him, giving him a nasty bite over the eye. The elephant carried her on his head for a few seconds, and then chucked her off. She next began charging the elephants indiscriminately, and presently came in my direction. I had her carefully covered with my 450, and was just on the point of firing when my elephant suddenly turned tail, and went for dear life, I holding on all I knew. After a bit the mount managed to get my beast back, and as I did not want any more elephants mauled, I called in all the howdahs, and forming line moved towards the place she was last seen. I was beginning to wonder if she had managed to sneak off, when, with another roar, she went for Paree and actually scratched old Sagaria on the trunk before Paree dropped her. For her size, 8, she certainly took a lot of beating as a fighter. Finally, on page 380 the Tusker Kennedy got mauled again. The first beat was on the Jury River, east of camp, and in it the tiger, which by the way was supposed to be a leopard, got through the guns. The second beat put him up again, and this time he was full of fight and succeeded in mauling Kennedy. Then he disappeared, and it took a third beat, in which he mauled another elephant, to make him break cover. Jit and James eventually finished him. Next, the book, In the Grip of the Jungles, by George Hogan Knowles, a writer by profession. The book is about his experiences in British India. Knowles has to be taken seriously. Let's read the preface on page 9. If there is a man fully equipped to write a book, it surely is this author, who has spent over 30 years roaming in that wonderful land. He has left his footprints everywhere between Bombay and the topmost heights of the mighty Himalayas. He has trodden the unknown ways of the jungle, and lived the life of the people. Knowles witnessed fights between wild animals, and saw large tuskers fight tigers. The first impressive fight is on page 26-27, where the elephant managed to defeat the tiger, although the tiger was already wounded and exhausted. Mrs. B now motioned her head towards the plateau. At that instant the tiger sat down, and as he did so, I saw to my surprise, a female elephant with a calf, coming down the pathway to the stream below. Then another elephant followed, and then, to my complete discomfort, an enormous bull elephant, with a formidable pair of gleaming tusks, slowly felt his way down to the stream, where the other elephants had begun to splash themselves with water. Then, suddenly, events came crowding together, crammed into so short a space of time, that scarcely a breathing interval in which one might hope to collect one's thoughts, seemed to have been granted by Hanuman, and by the gods of darkness and thunder. All nature seemed disturbed. Towering over the great jungle, colossal trees like solemn chieftains bowing in silence before the sullen mood of a capricious empress dipped their branches in obedience, lest a leaf should flutter, and rouse the ominous stillness. Under the mantle of gloom, the elephant herd froze like black boulders, and the tiger crouched lower. The danger of Mrs. B.'s position struck me instantly. The Dalbergia Sisu, an inferior rosewood tree, being peculiarly brittle and shallow-rooted, is very liable to be blown down in a violent storm, or to have its branches torn off. I was therefore, now, as much concerned for Mrs. B. as she was, apparently, for me. Suddenly, a blinding flash of lightning, followed by a terrific crash, seems to shake the darkening glen. It seems as if a shell hole, must for a certainty have been gouged out somewhere close by. A distant tearing through timber approaches nearer, and a wind sweeps through the grove, then dies down. The tiger rises, turns right about and, with long, crouching strides, makes straight for my anthill. My thoughts are surging. Can the monster possibly have my cover in view? Does Mrs. B suspect it? Her rifle is up. The tiger is passing the tethered buffalo, who, with head down and a front leg, awkwardly hitched up, is following the great cat's movements. As I bend forward to do a bolt, a flame suddenly shoots out from the mackin, and I remain crouched, freezing against my precious anthill. The monster tiger is hit. As I see him lurch and fall forward, sudden, continuous thunder from the heavens drowns his terrific roars, but the great brute is up in an instant, and horrors turns with indescribable savagery on the unfortunate buffalo, whom he is tearing to pieces. I hear the clicking and clashing of metal on top of the mackin, and raise my eyes slowly, shivering in a cold sweat. Mrs. B is struggling with her rifle. Great Scott, has the bolt jammed? Now she picks up my empty 500 Express. She is looking for the cartridges. Instinctively my trembling fingers press against my right-hand pocket, and my heart sinks as I feel the cartridges there. Mrs. B is again struggling with the bolt of her rifle, the tiger, maddened with pain, charging in the direction of the metallic sound whenever it can be heard, and returning again, as savagely, onto the mangled body of the dead buffalo. I am shaking in every limb, lest the monster should see me, or hear my feverish breathing. Then, suddenly, the storm bursts, and I see the mackin swaying and crashing against the wind-swept boughs. Through the ceaseless fury of cyclonic wind, and darting streaks of molten lead, the tiger's awful rumbles and roars of pain and anger can be heard, piercing the glen carried to the elephant herd hugging their calf. For, suddenly, as the floodgates of heaven open, through the lashing torrents of rain, I see the great bull elephant striding uncannily towards us, across the open glen, shaking his huge head and tusks. Heavens! I feel dazed, benumbed. Mrs. B is clinging to her tree for dear life. Suddenly our two rifles come crashing down, and the tiger, now beginning to stagger, lurches forward in hideous rage, to maul anything he can get, but his arch-enemy, his disputant to the jungle throne, is on him. So rapidly has the tusker come up, almost under Mrs. B, as heaving tree, the fierce elephant a phantom, a nightmare. In the misty spray of drenching rain, that rebounds off him, charges the wounded tiger, in a blood-curdling manner. The striped monster swerves round towards my anthill, but staggers, and turns sharply with a roar, heading for the open glen. As he passes me, I catch a glimpse of blood pouring down his shoulder. With short, lurching rushes, he gets past the dead buffalo, when the great elephant, pulling up almost onto his haunches, heaves round, and, between Mrs. B.'s tree and my anthill, splashes the sodden ground in another terrific charge. His glistening, beam-like tusks are lowered, and, with a shrill blast like the shriek of a grating axle, he meets his roaring antagonist, who tries to hurl himself onto the elephant's curled-up trunk, but the wounded tiger is exhausted. He falls, and instantly, through the massive heap of tearing claws and fangs, plows a great white shaft. The elephant has pinned down his enemy. The tiger's roars cease, as again, and again the striped form is gored brutally, unmercifully. Then, full height, up stands the mammoth, and, under zigzagging tongues of flame and passing claps of thunder, he tramples fiercely upon the carcass. And then, as the wind and the torrents of rain abate, the triumphant elephant, pointing his reddened tusks skywards, lifts his trunk over his head, a superb picture of wild grandeur, and, with a loud trumpet, strides back across the glen with a majestic swing. On page 65-66 there is another story of a tusker defeating a tigress, although the tigress was already badly wounded. The two boars were on their mettle, and kicking up clouds of dust. Suddenly there was a yelp like a war cry from the dozen or more dogs present, and they rushed upon the pig. For a moment the sturdy defendants seemed to be entirely overwhelmed, but with the burly obstinacy of their race they ripped to the right and left, trying to push forward at the same time. Two dogs were actually carried along a short distance, on the back of one of the boars, while some 2 or 3 dogs were lying on the road boars to combat. It seemed evident that the boars would soon be borne down by the little bloodthirsty creatures, when suddenly one boar broke away into the high grass, on the far side of the road. Some dogs followed, but after a short interval they came racing back. This struck us as being very strange, for the wild dog has no mercy, and will run his victim down to death. Suddenly bright crimson rays shot across the grassy plain, from the great fiery globe that reddened the eastern hills, and hung over their summits. Surrounded and torn by the merciless dogs, the poor boar on the road had his head poised up in the agony, as it looked, of a last effort. We decided to shoot at the dogs in order to save the poor pig. The elephant on which the Ra and I were riding suddenly became restless, and up went Major B.'s rifle, but, before he could fire, we saw the mount quickly grip his arm, and point to the right, into the grass, over the struggling mass below. Major B.'s rifle went up again, and we followed the direction anxiously, but could see nothing in the dense high grass. A few seconds and a tongue of flame darted out of the cold steel barrels with a crash, followed, to our great surprise, by the deafening roar of a tiger. The red dry grass in front of us is immediately a rustling and shaking expanse of stampeding animals, and with the exception of a few of the bolder dogs, standing at the edge of the road, and panting with their tongues lolling out, looking fiendishly at the poor boar, all have disappeared. We hear the loud savage growls of the tiger continuing, and we move in that direction. We push our 2 elephants over the forest line, where some dying dogs are struggling beside the collapsing boar, and have moved forward about 100 paces through the thick grass, when in a small open clearing we suddenly come face to face with the tiger, hit apparently by Major B.'s shot, in a death struggle with the boar that had escaped. We could now understand the reason why the dogs that had followed him had so promptly returned. Both the tiger and the boar seemed to be badly wounded, and in pain and rage are tearing fiercely at each other. In the surprise of the moment our elephants swerve badly, but the mounts are plucky, and know what to do, handling them firmly and silently. It strikes us instantly that it is a tigress, from her size and general conformation. She is on top of the boar, who throws her off suddenly, with a wonderful exhibition of strength, rushing forward immediately, and ripping her terribly in the bowels. With fierce gasping roars in rapid succession, the tigress springs again, but she is facing us, and we are immediately seen. There is no possibility of a shot from off our turning and twisting elephants, and now as quick as the sweep of a sharp-edged blade she leaves the pig, and we see the gorgeous flash of black and red, flaring in front of us, while a few chance shots pass wide of the mark instantly before we can realize what has occurred. She alights on the trunk of Major B.'s swerving tusker. As her huge open claws and teeth are embedded in the frantic elephant's soft flesh, a loud shriek of pain escapes him. The tigress seems to be clinging savagely just below his forehead, and the mount, looking down upon her furious steam-spitting jaws, is close enough to be spluttered with reddened froth. The next instant, a deafening roar from Major B.'s maddened elephant shakes the very ground, as he swings round onto his hind legs. He stands bolt upright for a few seconds, and then comes down with a great thud, on the ground with his 4 feet in his mighty effort to shake off the huge cat. The mount and Major B are clinging desperately to the pad as they are hurled up, and then twirled round with the fury of the elephant. Major B.'s rifle is flung out of his hand, and it crashes into the high grass. Suddenly the infuriated tusker turns his blood-besmeared trunk towards us, dripping with the hideous mess from the awful wounds in the bowels of the tigress, and falls onto his knees to crush her. The spectacle is a terrible one, and the mount is now in imminent danger of his life. He can hardly keep his seat at the steep angle of the tusker's suddenly conceived and frantic stratagem, and Major B., with his left arm around the mount's neck, is trying his utmost to keep him from tumbling off and being crushed to death along with the tigress, who now must, sooner or later, let go her grip. My heart beats like a sledgehammer, as we see the huge tusker about to stand on his head, as it seems, and it looks as if he must take a somersault. We shout to Major B to try to jump off to one side, while we are doing our best to persuade our elephant up to rush the tigress when she springs away, as we expect her to do any moment in order to save herself. But no, the tigress is fighting with the ferocity of a mother that has cubs. Suddenly, as we expect the worst to happen, the tigress loosens her grip, and falls under the trunk of the elephant. Streams of blood pour down the tusker's forehead and trunk, and splash the white fur, which the tigress shows underneath as she lies struggling on her back with her protruding claws striking the air in fury. Her hind quarters seem to be under the kneeling weight of the tusker's head and trunk, and she is apparently pinned. The Ra is sitting in front of me, and now raises his rifle quickly, trying to take a careful aim at the head of the tigress roaring and spluttering close in front of the tusker's curled up trunk. The shot is a risky one, but something must be done, and I let the young Ra take it. The roars of the tigress cease as the sharp report of the rifle echoes through the hills. At this instant we see Major B. scrambling down off the pad so dangerously inclined forward. We immediately bring our elephant up cautiously behind the tusker, and make her sit down quietly some 30 paces away to pick the Major up without delay. Major B has scarcely reached our elephant when the tusker suddenly rises to his feet, and fortunately for us, in his mount, who is held on with the greatest pluck, begins to pommel the dead body of the tigress, who has received her quietus from the raw. Immediately Major B had scrambled up onto the pad of our elephant. We moved away rapidly about 200 yards, in case our immediate presence should give the excited tusker cause for further irritation and attack. In the absence of other tuskers to help quiet an enraged elephant, the best thing to do is to move away quietly if there is time, and to leave the Maut to deal with the temper of his animal. The Maut fought desperately with his elephant, using his formidable gabag, or iron hook, freely, and hurling upon him such a vast vocabulary of abuse, that we were struck with wonder at the unlimited possibilities of the Hindustani language. Another impressive account is found on pages 149-151. Here Knowles witnessed the attack to a mighty elephant, by a very large male tiger shot through the lungs. In spite of his injury, he was unable to roar. The tiger nearly killed the elephant. When he retreated to take a break, the elephant bolted. He was so badly mauled that the Maut died of a broken heart. The big male elephant struggled for many months, but eventually survived. Some years ago Diggs and a shikar friend, who was also a reputed sportsman, took leave together to shoot over some special ground, which Diggs had in view, a hotbed for tiger, as he calls it, in a secluded valley known as Pathapani, literally rock of pure water, situated somewhere in that vast tract of government forests, covering the lower Himalayas, between the hill stations of Nainital and Lansdowne. For the purpose of this story, I shall refer to his friend as S.P. He was a great shot too, and he and Diggs could print their initials on the target. Their rifles were the 375 and the 400 high-velocity, small bores, but they went in for selection shots, such as the head and the neck. We were once trying to bring to account an enormous tiger that was terrorizing all the cattle stations in the neighborhood. His pug marks, up the ravines and on the forest roads, were as large as soup plates. We had never seen anything like them before. It was our first visit up a beautiful valley called Pathapani, in a country where we subsequently bagged 9 tigers and 11 panthers in 2 weeks. The ground was quite new to us, and we spent the first few days exploring and tracking. We had 4 good elephants with us, kindly lent by a Maharaja who was a friend of S.P.S. Of these, our favorite, Howdah, elephant was a huge big tusker, who had been a Quetta, chucker out, his younger days, and about 40 tigers had been shot off his back. His name was Chand Marat, face of the moon, and his Maut's name was Akbar Khan. They were both fine old veterans, the Maut with a flowing white beard, and the elephant with great pointed tusks, like protruding beams enameled white, both nerveless and fearless, and true to the marrow. In this hour of the twinkling dawn, we moved silently along on Chand Marat to the mouth of the ravine, where the evening before we had tied up a buffalo calf for this monster tiger. Suddenly, Chand Marat lifts up his trunk, and scents the air. We take the warning, and the Maut quickly guides the elephant behind cover, to allow some wild elephants in front to cross the riverbed in which we are standing. A thin mist hangs over the valley, and a disturbed barking deer is yelling itself hoarse. There is no other sound but the falling of dripping dew, and our caps and coats are wet. We see the big form of the elephants go noiselessly by. They cross the broad bed and scramble up the opposite bank. A few stones only or roll down. We emerge from our cover, and try to find the drag of the tiger's kill. We hunt about, but can find not the slightest mark of the kill being dragged. Chand Marat is behaving queerly. He has never before shown such signs of restlessness. He now seems disinclined to obey his driver, and crosses the deep gorge of the ravine higher up, reluctantly. We think it most strange, but say nothing to the old Maut. Suddenly, there is a movement in the grass. Up goes S.P.'s rifle with a flash, and 2 shots ring out and echo through the still forests, as an enormous tiger gallops over the brow of the hillock. The thudding of his heavy gallop, and his colossal size are impressing beyond words, and we try to keep the elephant still, to listen. But, beyond the distant cries of peafowl, that yell at every disturbance in the jungle, dead silence follows. We wait 20 minutes, trying to keep Chand Marat steady. S.P. thinks it is a clean miss, but, as no animals roundabout have given the slightest indication of the tiger's movements, I refuse to believe in a miss, or that the gur is gone. I decide to dismount to see if there is some blood where the tiger was standing and ask S.P. to keep me covered, but he won't hear of my going alone, and we try to get down together. But, to our astonishment, the elephant refuses to sit down. The Maut forces him with his iron weapon, and he trumpets in a rage. He finally makes a half attempt and, with the Howdah, at a steep incline, rolling like a ship, we scramble off and jump to the ground. But our rifles, Akbar Khan cannot hand them down to us. He has lost control of the child. We shout to him in desperation, but for some unaccountable reason, Chand Marat, the staunchest of elephants, turns and bolts in a panic. And horrors, behind us, we hear that heavy thudding gallop again, and we see the huge G, having apparently taken the disturbance for a threat, returning over the hillock to fight for dear life. We turn sharply together, armless and helpless, to face the hillock and the savage monster that has crashed down in the grass barely 20 paces in front of us. We have turned just in time to stand shoulder to shoulder and to freeze like statues, though right in the open before him. We know nothing can save us but successful jungle deception, the practice of wild animals, and we do not move a hair's breadth. The brute is so close that we can see the vital blood jerking out of 2 small holes, high up, well in front of the shoulder, and pouring down his near flank. Terribly wounded through the lungs, he cannot roar, his breathing is like a great pair of risping bellows. His claws are extended full length, and his tail is lashing furiously. With ears savagely back, his great head moves round alternately, one moment slowly away from us, in the direction of the hillock, and the next swiftly and fiercely back to face us again with a ghastly grin, and a low guttural threat followed with a deafening spit like the escape of steam from an engine. These head movements with the terrible snarling and spitting are repeated, until we feel our nerves gradually collapsing. We know that the slightest mistake, or that the rustling of the grass near us for any cause, would mean instant death. Our knees are beginning to feel quacky, but we must hold out. Death is the alternative. And deception triumphs at last. We see the claws being drawn in, and the head is now steadily facing the hillock. To our left front we suddenly see the welcome form of Chand Marat standing still in the shadows, 100 yards away. The old experienced Maud is watching us. He is quieted, and brought back the elephant, and from our frozen attitude he knows what is wrong, and makes no mistake. Suddenly, the great monster lurches up, and gallops back over the hillock. Slowly we retreat rearwards, step by step, and the elephant is brought round to meet us. We are on the back of Chand Marat again, and our rifles are grasped in deep gratitude. It seems as though we have passed through an eternity of agony, but it is still morning, and the golden sunbeams are darting through the trees. S.P. and I are around that hillock looking down on the dead ledge with his paws up, and the whites of his eyes showing. The monster is sprawling on the broad of his back. I tell S.P., however, that I do not like his unnatural appearance, and advise him to make certain with another shot, but he thinks the skin will be spoiled, and we decide to throw some empty cartridge cases to see if there are some signs of life. The cases are thrown and we curse our stupidity. Like a flash of lightning the monster is between the elephant's legs. We fire 2 shots, but his movements are too rapid. The tiger's great claws tearing the elephant's thighs on the inside of his hind legs. Chand Marat, in terrible agony, trumpets like thunder. He lashes out and whirls round, but cannot get at the tiger to throw him off. Amidst a din, as if hell were let loose, a terrible tussle begins. The howdah is a matchbox on an ocean wave. The woodwork and the ropes are creaking ominously, and we are being hurled about and shaken to bits. We try to jump, but it is impossible, and have to trust to luck. Akbar Khan is yelling to the great elephant to use his weight, and directs him, and he begins to sit down on the G. We are warned that the elephant may roll, and that we must be prepared to jump, but the Ige loosens his mighty grip, as he feels the elephant's weight, and lollops back to that hillock. We yell to the Mao to hold Chand Marat steady for a second, to draw a bead on the furious monster panting in front of us, but the elephant bolts again in pain and panic over the low hills over terrible ground, with a torrent of blood behind him, and we pull up in the valley below from which we came up. The whole of this second incident lasted no more than half an hour. Poor Chand Marat was almost disemboweled. We unharnessed him, flinging howdah, pad, ropes, everything to the ground, and walked him slowly back to camp pouring with blood. We could do nothing more, while we followed behind on foot. 2 hours later, on fresh elephants, we were round that fateful hillock again, and found the dread monster lying for a second time, on the broad of his back, again showing the whites of his eyes. We took no more risks and put 2 bullets into his head simultaneously. He was a magnificent specimen. Lying on the spot, he measured to ft. 6, and from the tip of the nose to the tip of the tail. We heard of the death of old Akbar Khan, the Maut, some months afterwards. He must have died of a broken heart. The shock of his child's behavior, in whom he had implicit faith, must have haunted him and cut short the remaining days of his life. Chand Marat almost succumbed to his wounds too, and it took him several months to recover. In another story, saved from a rogue elephant, a male elephant was seen at close range, by Knowles and a friend. The rogue had encountered a large male tiger, and he had been badly wounded in the fight with no winner. Pages 195-201. While the men were thus reporting the result of their reconnaissance, up came 2 government forest guards, decked out in green turbans and khaki uniforms, to inform us of the appearance of the tusker in the vicinity of the camp. These guards are generally supposed to warn shooting parties, and travelers of dangerous rogues, and man-eating tigers, if any, if the whereabouts of such animals are known to them. "But where is my hat?" said Diggs, quite concerned. There was a roar of laughter, as we pointed to the mess on the ground. The shikaris enjoyed the joke and held their sides. "The tusker seems to have picked your honor's belongings out," said the head buffalo man to Diggs, for he must have danced upon your honor sola tapi. We found this pulp buried in the slush at the edge of the fire line. Diggs began to examine it closely. It is my sola hat with the khaki cover right enough, said Diggs, but no tusker has danced upon it. Look at this, he said. We all looked down and examined the spot on the pulp. There to our surprise, neatly impressed upon flat pieces of damp clay adhering to the crushed sola, were many half-pug marks of the tiger, and indents made by his claws, which none of us had noticed. The shikaris applauded Diggs, and said there was no shikari in all the world like himself. The pug marks of the hind leg, too, said Diggs. Do you know what happened? He inquired. Not the faintest idea, we said. Well, he went on, I'll just explain. The pulp is the shape of a roly-poly pudding. It has been rolled in the slush under one of the tiger's hind legs. What happened was that the tiger and the tusker must have come into contact when the latter rushed towards the spot where the tiger roared so close to us. My hat fell at the edge of the swamp, practically in a line with the animals. In a fight between a tiger and an elephant, the latter is forced to back, which he does, swinging from side to side, as the tiger's frontal attacks are made with the objective getting in between the elephant's legs, from one side or the other, or inducing the elephant to turn and expose his rump, when Stripes would be on the top of him like a flash of lightning. The tiger must have made the tusker back to the fire line, beyond my sola tapi, which brought the former directly on the top of it and, in his movements of attack, the tiger crushed up the hat as you see it. It must have come under his hind legs, as the tiger darted backwards and forwards, rolling up the pulp like a pudding. Had our elephants last evening remained calm and steady, we should have witnessed something of the fight in the dark. We stand behind our trees, freezing in momentary panic. We know that, here again, our lives depend upon calmness, and keeping quite still, and we dare scarcely breathe. Suddenly the awful silence is broken by that diabolical coal, or hot weather bird, that begins his discordant tuning on a tree just over our heads, just as the great stealthy criminal takes 2 silent steps forward, and puts out his trunk to smell. His red gleaming eyes, like little balls of fire, are fixed on our trees, as if he were gloating over his find. At this agonizing moment that terrible bird startles the forest with his maddening cry, brain fever, brain fever, brain fever. The last notes, echoing through the stillness in a screeching crescendo, aggravate the tusker, who comes deliberately forward now, feeling all round the trees nearest to him with his outstretched trunk. It is a living nightmare. He seems so near now that, for the first time, we notice great clots of congealed blood, and strips of flesh hanging down his trunk, where deep marks of long gashes, still bleeding, are quite prominent. It flashes through me how right Diggs was when he said that the tiger during that memorable evening of the elephant stampede had come actually into contact with him. Those terrible marks that make his appearance more savage than ever are the result of the battle and the tiger's punishing claws. We realize now, with redoubled anxiety, that we are not only dealing with a bad rogue elephant, but a wounded one. Diggs, from behind his tree in front of the shikaris and myself, glances quickly in our direction, trying to make us understand with his eyes that we must make a bolt for it, and dodge this ghastly, bloodthirsty demon among the trees. Firing the moment that we are released a few paces from our imprisoned position. My knees feel weak, as if I were only just convalescing after a long illness. There goes the snout of his trunk, but a few paces from Diggs' tree. The latter takes a step rearwards, and I am ready to shove off in the dash for life after him when, at that momentous second, that terrible moment, when fate and decision seem to meet as twin brothers, linked arm in arm, we hear a crash through the undergrowth at our back, and to our unspeakable horror, we see the half-naked figure of a man suddenly darting past our trees right in front of the tusker. It looks as if the thing in human form, whatever it might be, has suddenly gone mad. It appears that he is going to throw himself at the feet of the tusker, but no, with strange yells he dances, but 5 paces in front of the brute, as if to tantalize him, and then, as the monster, in a paroxysm of fury, turns on him, with a terrific roar, as if a bomb were exploding, the agile figure skips to one side and dashes off in the direction of the valley from which the big elephant so silently emerged. The brute swings round as instantly, and crashes after the poor wretch at a pace that would give even a champion athlete but a poor chance of escape in a straight run. But this gives us the longed-for opportunity. Our rifles are instantly leveled, and a volley bursts close over the monster's back. He hesitates a moment. We see the human figure gliding round in our direction again, and then, as another volley from our rifles, mine a heavy 577, crashes over him, the bullets whizzing a few inches over his head and ears. The great elephant dives down the valley from where he came. Let's finally move to more recent accounts. The last book I'd like to show you is the best-selling book, No Beast So Fierce, by Dane Huckelbridge, where he states that full-grown elephants have been victims of tiger predation in recent times, and he mentions that a 20-year-old elephant was eaten by a tiger in Corbett Park in 2011, as well as a 28-year-old killed and eaten by several tigers, maybe a family with 2 grown cubs. In Chapter 1, pages 23 and 24, he writes that Bengal tigers in northern India are known to have killed and eaten both rhinos and elephants, and while they tend to prefer juveniles for obvious reasons, full-grown specimens of both species have been victims of tiger predation. In 2011, a 20-year-old elephant was killed and partially eaten by a tiger in Jim Corbett National Park, and in 2014, a 28-year-old elephant in Kaziranga National Park farther east was killed and feasted upon by several tigers at once. Keep in mind, a mature Indian elephant can weigh well over 5 tons. The Bengal tigers responsible essentially took down something the size of a U-Haul truck, just so they could gnaw on it. After a little research I found the news he was talking about. Here we go.
In the last part of this video, we will look at more recent news stories about tigers and elephants killing each other. However, as reports of elephants killing tigers are very rare, I would first like to show you a famous report from 1904. It is about a fight to the death in the Colosseum of Hue Citadel. It is important to know the context, because this was the last of a long series of fights to the death between tigers and elephants in this Colosseum. Let's take a look. A unique, yet rarely visited monument in Hue's ancient citadel is H. Quinn Arena, a stadium where tigers and elephants once fought till their last breath for the royal family's entertainment. While one might expect this to be a fair fight, the elephant's victory was nearly assured as the tiger's sharp teeth and claws were removed before each battle. This edge was likely given to the elephants due to their royal favor, earned for their role as tools of war. In addition, Tamers sat atop the Goliaths to direct them. That being said, both animals could put on quite a show. Before H. Quinn was built, these clashes took place in open fields, the most gruesome of which occurred under Jia Long's reign and featured the massacre of 18 tigers by 40 elephants. During this battle, one of the tigers pushed a tamer off his elephant who was then crushed under its weight. Shortly after, Jia Long's heir, Min Mng, was nearly killed by a tiger in a similar skirmish. To make things safer, relatively speaking, King Min Mng decided to build H. Quinn in 1830 for such sporting events, the last of which took place in 1904. During this last event, a French journalist from Figaro was invited and published the fight. Anyway, without further ado, let's read the 1904 article. A fight worth living. Elephant versus tiger. The Figaro publishes an account of a fight between a tiger and an elephant from its correspondent at Hue, Annam. The combat had been specially arranged by Ton Tai, the king of the French Protectorate, for the amusement of the European residents, who were present in large numbers. The tiger had been captured by the Kiag himself, and the elephant had, some time ago, killed 2 of its keepers, and was a fierce brute. Excited by the shouts of the mahouts, the elephant took the offensive and rushed upon the tiger, which, however, sprang aside and leaped upon its adversary's back. The elephant, by a sudden movement, shook the tiger off, and then, lifting it with its trunk, hurled it against the iron fence of the arena. On rising, the tiger fastened its teeth in the leg of the elephant, but a moment later had the life crushed out of its body by a terrific blow of the elephant's foot. It is not known how much of the story of the Hue Colosseum was known to the journalist, but he claims to have seen the tiger's teeth. Perhaps on this occasion only the tiger's claws were removed or dulled. Probably the claws were removed because the tiger did not try to scratch the elephant's trunk. This is interesting because, as we have already seen, the elephant usually tries to use its trunk as little as possible when fighting a tiger, as it is one of its most vulnerable points. Anyway, let's move on to more recent times. Here are some photographs taken at the 1995 annual elephant polo tournament in Nepal. In particular, there is a photo of an elephant wounded by a tiger. Here's some news from 2005. An elephant is suspected to have died of wounds inflicted by the same tigress that attacked a man at the Corbett National Park in Uttaranchal. Park officials confirmed that the pachyderm, which was found dead Friday night, had fought with the tigress that had mauled a man at the Dikala tourist complex on the previous night. According to a park official, the elephant had been spotted with wounds, visibly inflicted by a tiger about 5 or 6 days back. We were keeping track of the animal. Finally we found him lying dead in the forest quite close to the Dikala complex. The elephant was found to have suffered multiple wounds on its trunk, and it was amply evident that these were sustained in a battle with the tigress, which is suspected to have also suffered wounds. The tigress had been spotted with 2 cubs. These cubs are believed to have been with the mother during the fight with the elephant. In 2009, the New Indian Express published the news of a tiger killing a tusker at Eraviculam Park in Kochi. In a rare incident, a tusker was killed by a tiger inside the Eraviculam Wildlife Park near Munnar on Monday. Forest officials said the body of the tusker was found by the forest watchman of the area. A team of officials, along with veterinary doctors, have gone to the spot to conduct a post-mortem. We believe that only one tiger was involved in the attack, as there are only pug marks of one tiger, he said. Also in 2009, the Telegraph published the news of a tiger attacking a bull elephant after killing a buffalo. In 2011 we already seen the news published by The Hindu about a tiger killing a 20-year-old elephant. In 2012 a 15-year-old tusker was killed by a tiger in the Corbett National Park. According to National Park Field Director Ranjan Kumar Mishra, park staff on patrol discovered a tiger eating the body of a tusker in the Dila range of Corbett on Sunday noon. The pachyderm is estimated to have been about 15 years in age and had tusks about 2 feet long. The tiger is believed to have attacked the pachyderm from the rear, and after climbing atop the beast, is thought to have inflicted severe wounds on its rear and head. Apart from the back and head, the hind legs of the pachyderm had deep wounds and the ears of the elephant had been eaten. Considering the wounds on the elephant and the condition of the location where the body was found, the pachyderm is believed to have struggled hard against the tiger before being finally killed, added Mishra. The same year a young male tiger also made it to the news for charging at the elephants of a research team. In 2013 the tigers must have had enough of elephant meat and decided to shift to rhino's meat. Bibhav Talukdar, who chairs the International Union for Conservation of Nature Asian Rhino Specialist Group, said that, a tigress rearing its cubs can kill a rhino as the feline need not go far from its cubs. Though rhinos are mighty, a single adult tiger can kill a rhino. In Corbett there have been incidents where elephants have been killed by tigers. Compared to this, rhino is an easier kill, he said. In 2013 a tiger killed a 7-year-old tusker in Silent Valley National Park. In 2014 we've already seen the news about a group of tigers killing a 28-year-old elephant in Kaziranga Park. In 2016, a tiger killed an adolescent elephant. The carcass was discovered by some travelers. Let's read their blog. We managed to get a trip into the forest in the evening and were very lucky to see an elephant carcass. We were told that a tiger had killed the elephant, which was an adolescent and not a fully grown one. But how the tiger managed to bring it down was a surprise, and we couldn't understand. Normally elephants are in groups, and how did the tiger manage this? In 2017 in Kerala's Wayanad, 6 elephants were killed by tigers for a dispute over water resources. Also in 2017, a 20-year-old male elephant died from the injuries inflicted by a tiger. Let us read. The carcass of an elephant has been found in Corbett Tiger Reserve. It is believed that this elephant died after being wounded by a tiger. Deputy Director Amit Verma reached the spot and inspected the spot. The body has decomposed as it is 15 days old. His age is estimated to be 20 years. The elephant death is not suspicious. He told that the tiger has eaten the back leg of the elephant. It is believed that the elephant has died after being injured in the tiger attack. In 2018, a 20-year-old female elephant was found dead inside the reserve forest at Uliu. After the veterinarian conducted a post-mortem, the carcass was found with deep injuries in one of the legs. The animal was not able to walk long distances, preventing it from collecting enough green fodder. We have also found tiger pug marks in the area. There is a possibility that the tiger might have attacked the weak elephant. Its trunk was missing from the carcass. In a recent study undertaken by the government officials in Corbett National Park, tigers are killing elephants, particularly the young ones. The study collected data from 2014 to 2019, found that around 21 elephants, 9 tigers, and 6 leopards died due to infighting and clashes. Of the 21 elephants dead, 13 were killed by tiger. Meanwhile, no tiger was killed by the elephants. In 2020, the carcass of an 8-year-old elephant was found in the Ramnagar forest. The elephant had injury marks on its legs and trunk. It is likely to have died due to infighting with a tiger or a tigress. In 2021, a 7-year-old tiger and a 15-year-old elephant both died fighting each other in Kochi, although experts say that the help of the herd cannot be ruled out. Also in 2021, a 10-year-old tigress was killed by a herd. In an incident that has left many flummoxed, a carcass of a young 10-year-old tigress was found in an elephant corridor in Wayanad. WTI's field officer Shojan M.A. was part of the expert committee formed for the post-mortem of the tigress that revealed evidence of a fight with a herd of elephants. Tigers are known to prey on elephant calves, but this was a rare instance when a tiger was ostensibly killed by elephants. There were no external injuries, and the reason of the death was due to abnormal rotation of the head, dislocation of the atlanto-occipital joint, and rupture of the spinal cord. A tiger will generally avoid an altercation with an elephant herd, but this wasn't the case here. India's 30,000 elephants and 3,000 tigers coexist with its 1.3 billion people in rapidly fragmenting habitat that brings in conflict situations. Despite these two animals being flagships of wildlife conservation in the country and sharing the same space, there is little room left in the corridors that we are fighting to protect. Finally, in 2021, a protective mother elephant died from injuries inflicted by a tiger. Russian biologist Sergei Kucharenko once said, "It is difficult to find an animal on Earth that would be as powerful and agile, beautiful and fearless and as widely known to people of all continents as the tiger." Elephant? Let's assume. A lion? Let's admit. Rhinoceros? Bear? No. Without belittling the merits of the giants of Africa, the elephant and the lion, there is reason to say, after all, the tiger attracts the closest attention and burning interest to itself, and it is he who should rightfully wear the crown of the king of beasts. How much truly monstrous power is in him, harmoniously combined with grace. Among animals, he is an intellectual, a brave, and even a knight. And hardly anyone else has such bright, beautiful and at the same time so practical for an inveterate and experienced hunter. We finally came to the conclusion of this video. I'd like to give a big thanks to all those channels from which I gained that amazing tigers footage. I hope that tigers will instill confidence in you and transfer their bravery to you. Remember, tigers are ferocious and courageous animals. They can attack any prey, no matter the magnitude. If you are battling with fear, you can draw on the courage of the tiger and allow it to fill you up until you see nothing as achievable. Your dreams will be accomplished if you dare to go after your dreams no matter how big they are.